All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Comedy Sports DNI Talks. I am your host, Luis Cortez. I am a longtime Comedy Sports Chicago and Los Angeles player, and I am also the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for Comedy Sports Chicago. A few weeks back, I started this show essentially to introduce you to our ensemble and their experiences, the truths that they have had coming up through our classes, not just our classes, but the improv community in Chicago as a whole. And this, of course, is not only to allow you to meet our ensemble and hear more about them outside of the shows, but also to normalize a lot of conversations within our theater that have been a long time coming, and it's time for us to really be verbal about these sort of things. And today, I am joined by one of the people that has been running around our theater for the last couple of years. They are part, what was known as House Party, now known as Rec League. So please welcome Rec League member Clarke Newton.
Hi, I'm Clarke. I use they, them, or he, him pronouns, and I am excited to be here.
Clarke, I'm so happy you're here. I was just telling you a little bit ago that though we have seen each other around, we've never actually gotten to sit and have like just a formal chit chat. I know in the past you've like come up to me and approached me about a couple things, but we've never actually gotten to chill. So I was actually very excited about this specific one because for a long time I've always been like, I want to get to know them. But of course, my surly resting face keeps people from approaching me.
I've always felt you were approachable. I have never been pushed away by a
My
surly
surliness.
face.
Okay, good, good. Because I have no plans on changing my surly face. Clarke, thank you so much for coming. So obviously, I want to talk about your time at Comedy Sports, but before we even get to any of that, please tell us a little bit about yourself. Whatever you want to share, where you come from, or anything like that, and then where your improv journey started.
Sure, I'll just give like a little Spark Notes version of my career in the performing arts. Started in theater when I was 11 and then quickly dove in to every aspect of that I could, and climbed the ladder of that field as fast as I possibly could until I was 19 and I was working at the Kennedy Center as a guest festival producer. And then eventually decided, I think it was about 2018, fall of 2018, that I really wanted to pursue comedy because I had been doing stand-up all around the DC stand-up scene. I had done improv and sketch in college, and that's really where my heart was. And I knew that the best place to do that was Chicago. And so I came here and literally the week that I moved to Chicago, auditioned for Comedy Sports, and it very quickly became my comedy home in the city.
You auditioned for classes or for a team?
For a team. I auditioned for House Party the week I moved to Chicago.
You arrived, and within the first week of you landing in Chicago from, you said Orlando?
No, from DC. There
From
was,
DC.
I like skipped over the weird part where I did a little stint in Orlando
Here's the
for
thing.
7 months working for Disney World.
I did some. I researched you for the interview, and I saw that you worked there, and so like maybe I had Orlando in the head. But yes, you did say DC. Uh,
Oh, good. I took a detour because I wanted to work for Disney for a little bit because I thought that just getting my foot in the door at Disney would get me into Disney theatricals. And then I realized that wasn't the exact path I wanted to follow, and I went back to the Kennedy Center in DC.
got it. Okay, but still, 7 months in Florida. There are worse things.
Absolutely. Working for Disney, you can do a lot worse than working for Disney.
Oh, not much, but yes. Uh,
Very fair.
all right. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you are about 2 to 3 years into your improv adventures.
That is correct, yeah.
All right. So you have literally been involved in comedy sports from the beginning of like Chicago improv time.
Yes.
Wow.
Literally,
Okay.
like the week I moved to Chicago, I started Class of the Annoyance and I auditioned for Comedy Sports, and that's where my journey started.
And what was your first team? So you
My
had,
first team was Radar, which was coached by Yvette Jaskowitz.
and how is that?
That was honestly awesome. Yvette is a total boss. I feel like if this is airing right after Kelsey's, it's going to seem like you have two Yvette stands right after each other, but I feel like Yvette deserves the hype because
The best
she,
fault for being too good at what she does.
for real, she will like make sure you know what you're supposed to be doing, but she will also take care of you in the best way possible. Like, cannot say enough good things about Yvette.
So she was your very first coach.
Yes.
Okay, so you walk into this scene and the first thing that you get is this badass woman coach. What's that like? Because I came up with, like many of us, nothing but straight white dudes just teaching me the yuckity yucks. So all of a sudden, here you have this cool badass woman teaching you for your first team. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Not gonna lie, was a little intimidated.
Yeah, she,
um,
she's
'Cause
amazing.
she has one of my favorite leadership styles where she makes you want to earn her respect. And so I spent a lot of time being like, oh my gosh, I have to be good enough because I just want her to love me. And the truth is, she already does. She picks you for your team because she loves you. It just took me a second to figure that out. Because I had done some improv in college, and college improv is a nasty world. To put it lightly. And so I
I
did
too
come
did the
from
college improv years.
came from some obnoxious white dudes thinking they knew everything and got to jump to just a boss ass woman who actually does know what she's talking about. So I learned so much so quickly. It was insane.
Yvette is really good at the love part of tough love, where I think most of us
Yes.
like to focus on the tough part. She focuses on the love part, and I think it really takes her really far when she does that. So you started on this team with Yvette. At the same time, we're doing classes over at Annoyance.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
The annoyance is a wild and crazy world. For anyone watching this that doesn't know, their philosophy of comedy is essentially take care of yourself on stage, which means do whatever you need to do to be the funniest version of you, which is slightly different from the comedy sports philosophy where we do kind of take care of each other more. I think there's a way to blend the philosophies that I've tried to work into my own personal style. Um, and I feel like the comedy sports philosophy creates a healthier ensemble. There were definitely some moments at the annoyance where someone would be doing something and we would have to stop the class to have a conversation about it because what they were doing was just offensive or rude or not okay. And I have yet to experience a moment at comedy sports where that has happened.
I mean, I will say this: the fact that they're stopping the class to talk about it is already leagues ahead of what would happen when I started, which was just let's sit here uncomfortably for a second. Maybe a couple of us look at each other and make this face, but that's about it.
Truth. That was my college improv career. Was essentially you just sit there while the bad thing happens and then you try to forget about it afterwards.
And were you someone who would voice the fact that we needed to talk about this, or were you more kind of on the like kind of I don't want to say anything, I don't want to rock the boat sort of thing? Like, did you
Yeah,
feel comfortable? I guess the question is, did you feel comfortable enough to speak up?
in some situations, yes. I was the type of person that I would take an indirect approach, which isn't always the best, but I would go to other people and I'd be like, "Hey, did you notice this too? Was this like did you also find this not okay?" Which some people can see as gossipy, which was never my intent, but I think there are better ways of handling it. Um, and there was, I'll go into it a little bit, a situation in my college where it did get really out of control. And a guy repeatedly in every scene was making fun of my sexuality. and I just couldn't take it anymore. But I also was very intimidated by him because he was the head of our college improv team. And so I ended up taking it to the school administration, and it became a whole hot mess.
I'm sure it did.
Sometimes these people in power don't like being called out on things. And thankfully, like, the administration from the school was on my side. I'm very grateful for that. I was very lucky for that. But I almost got kicked off that team because I questioned authority.
Yeah, that's pretty that was pretty standard as I was kind of coming up. Um, but okay, so you have these situations in class over an annoyance where people are kind of essentially crossing the line, but there was room there for people to be able to say, I think we need to talk about that. Specifically, stop the scene, stop making someone have to be in that scene, and then talk about the situation so that we are aware as to why we stopped it.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that was on the instructors. I could definitely see if the instructor didn't do that, it devolving into a very similar, like, college improv type situation where people are just talking to each other after class to be like, were you okay with that? I don't know if I was okay with that. And so I think in these types of situations, it's uh, kind of up to the person in power to see what's happening and take control of the situation a little bit.
And how long were you on Yvette's team?
I was on Yvette's team for that full year, that full season.
And how many seasons have you gone through now? How many seasons have you?
I think how for comedy sports. Oh, it's hard to calculate because of the pandemic, but I think I'm in my third right
Okay.
now.
How was the switch from stage to screen? How did you deal with that? Like, was that hard for you?
Yeah, it was. I would say at first it was anxiety inducing because I didn't know what to expect.
Mhm.
But I think, similar to what other people have voiced in these interviews, it gave me a lot of space to grow as a performer because instead of me asking, well, what does the audience think is funny right now, and taking on improv as a battle between me and the audience to try to make them laugh, it was okay, what makes me laugh? What do I want to do right now?
Yeah, totally. How long would you say it took you to kind of find that little spark of comfortability of like, oh,
I would say for me, it happened relatively quickly. I would say, I think there was a point in the middle of our first show that my team did when we had turned digital where I saw hair clippers next to me. And I would never like do anything that could potentially cause the audience anxiety while I was on stage. But I picked up the hair clippers and started like pretending like I was about to shave my head during the scene, and it was so fun because it felt like I was playing a trick on the audience, and it felt like because there was that distance between us, it was okay to do that. I wasn't looking at anyone's face, like asking if it was okay. I was making the choice for myself that this is okay.
that is yeah, that is such a that's very distinctive. Like, I like that. I like the idea of acknowledging not just where they're coming from, but for whom. And to have that, like, this is for me because I'm feeling like I have control of this situation and I know exactly what's going on, but I know you'll follow me along because I'm presenting it in such a confident way. That's great. Oh man, that's awesome. What a great way of looking at that.
Absolutely. And I feel like when you're playing for yourself, the audience enjoys it so much more because they see you having fun. They're not seeing someone ask them for permission to have fun.
So, as you continue to play these shows, I don't know how many other people you've spoken outside of, say, like the comedy sports world who are also attempting to do these online shows. I feel like, and maybe you've seen this too, but the people that I've spoken to, everyone seems like ready to be
Oh
done.
no, you froze.
And
I
you,
don't know if you can still see me.
I can hear you. Can you hear me? There you are.
There you are.
Okay. Okay. That's all right. We'll try it again.
I'm so sorry. I
Don't
don't know what
apologize.
happened.
I can edit this.
Love
Or
it.
let me just leave it. Uh,
Technology.
Hey, who cares?
It's
Uh,
the digital world.
uh,
Coronavirus.
let's see. I don't even remember my question anymore. All right. So let's keep going. So um, you came aboard. You got your first team. Yvette was kicking your ass and showing you all the sweet, sweet improv that you could take. Um, you're going through your classes at Annoyance. How are you being received within the improv community? Are you feeling welcomed? Is there some hesitancy for whatever reason or another, or are you just someone who, like I myself, am someone who needs to walk around the pool a couple times before jumping in? I'm not a run through the gate, throw my towel into the water sort of guy. Uh, but what about you? How are you finding your footing once you arrived?
Yeah. I to give a little bit of context to my arrival. Um this first week that I came to Chicago was super eventful. Not just in that I had jumped immediately into the Chicago comedy scene, but I think it was the night after I moved in, I experienced one of the worst cases of transphobia that I have experienced while in Chicago, where a bouncer would not let me into a bar specifically because of my identity. And so I went to that, and I think that was like a day or two before my comedy sports audition. And so I went in from having been in this kind of tumultuous college improv community to not really knowing what to expect of the Chicago improv community, other than I had just had this experience in Chicago that was not good. And so I do think I personally, like, no one treated me in a way in the Chicago comedy community that made me feel like I needed to step back, but I definitely needed people to extend a hand to me for me to feel comfortable, because I definitely had some walls up and wasn't sure what to expect, wasn't sure who was going to be accepting. And I tend to be a pretty optimistic person. I was pretty sure they would be, but I just personally, it helped me so much anytime anyone came up to talk to me instead of expecting me to go up to talk to them.
Right.
Just because it clicked in my head that, like, okay, this is a safe person. I can work with them. We can perform together.
Yeah, I'm very similar in that I prefer to kind of be approached first. Um, and when I arrived, just a couple of years before you, um, I was coming from a completely different community that I'd been in for the bulk of my life, and now here I am. I was about 5 years ago, so I was like 35, um, coming into a community of like young 20 somethings who are wanting to close down the bars every night and talk about getting on that main stage. And I'm just like, guys, I gotta go home. It's like late, and I got a wife. And so it was very hard for me to make friends at the beginning. I would say I did not feel like I really started making friends until about a year after landing here, because that's how long it took me just to find that comfort level of like, hello, I'm new, even though I was here for a year. Um, but so you kind of stand back a little bit and wait for people to approach you, but I'm assuming that people did start approaching you.
Yeah, absolutely. I, again, not to speak even more highly of Yvette, but one thing that she does when putting together a team is she not only looks for the best improvisers, but she looks for the people who are going to be the nicest. And so I think, especially in terms of the team that I got put on at Comedy Sports, I was around people who would approach me, who would extend a hand to me. There were definitely some other classes I was in at the Annoyance, and then I also took classes at Second City where I had to learned to make the effort for myself to approach other people. But again, most of the time when I approached other people, it ended up being pretty good.
Good, good. Well, that's great. I mean, it's hard to be able to progress with that sort of stuff when you're not gifted with some positive experiences at the beginning. Um, so aside from that instance with the bouncer, were there any other transphobic sort of situations that put you obviously in a like kind of closed off sort of place?
Yeah. Um, I am not going to name the name of the theater, but there was another theater that I was taking classes at, where the first day of class we were asked to go around and just say our name and pronouns, and someone like rolled their eyes as soon as they were asked to give their pronouns, which like I get there are legitimate reasons why some people would not want to share their pronouns, but this guy clearly had other motives for
A chip on his
not
shoulder
feeling
sort of thing?
pronouns were valid. And so that definitely like kind of put a weird air over that class, partially because I don't feel like it was handled very well. No one really stepped in to try to normalize sharing pronouns in that situation. The people in charge were just kind of like, so you're going to share your pronouns or not? Which is never how that conversation should go,
No.
regardless of the response. So that class was definitely more difficult for me, and I've had teachers and leaders in the community use the wrong pronouns for me, which has also been difficult because I'm paying them to be there and I want to learn from them, but at the same time I also deserve respect. So it's a difficult situation to navigate, and in those situations I have been very grateful for the other people who have stepped in to support me or come to my defense and correct people so that I am not constantly having to exert the energy to correct other people and stand up for myself.
Let me ask you, as someone who gets mispronounced, I'm assuming quite a bit, um, hopefully less and less. But what is your opinion on when classes do ask students to share pronouns, specifically in a circle? I guess I've always had not trepidation, but more like I've always been curious as to those people who might find themselves in that mid transitional sort of place where they're trying to figure out if they're going to make that change, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a situation where they're like, I need you to tell me your pronouns in front of this group of people. When I guess when I thought about it that way, I was almost kind of like, it's almost like you're asking something very personal of someone who might not be ready to share that very personal thing. Um, but as someone who has gone through that, this is all just me kind of like, dear diary. But as someone who has gone through that, I would love to hear your 2 cents on that.
Absolutely. And I have been someone who has been in the awkward situation. I think when it started to be normalized to ask people for their name and pronouns, I was also just coming out at that point, and so I had to deal with the awkward, everyone share their name and pronouns, and there would always be someone in the circle who would look at me, and I'd be like, I don't know the answer to this yet. Don't look at me. So my personal opinion and the opinion that I know that some of my friends hold is that instead of demanding a name and pronouns, asking or saying like we're going to go around the circle, share your name, and if you feel comfortable, your pronouns. And then the key part of that I would say is it shouldn't just be the trans people in the circle who need to feel or should feel comfortable sharing their pronouns. I think it's also up to the cis people to feel comfortable sharing their pronouns so that it's not just a hole in the circle where just the trans person is sharing.
Right. So essentially, like, in order to create that communal feeling, we all kind of need to act in a communal way.
Yeah, and I also think it helps when there's another question asked other than name and pronouns, so there doesn't have to be a weird gap where you're waiting to see if someone's gonna share their pronouns or not before the next person speaks. Even if it's like name, pronouns, and favorite ice cream flavor, that way the person can just choose to share their name and ice cream flavor, and it keeps going around the circle and there's a normal flow. So no one is worried that people are going to be looking at them or waiting for some sort of answer.
Okay, so essentially, kind of like ask some qualifiers, but also make sure to give them the space to share if they feel comfortable sharing.
Absolutely.
Awesome. That's a fantastic answer. So here you are. You find yourself about what? About 3 years into your studies now. How how are you feeling? Where do you find yourself? Like, what's your community like now? From for week one, you came in, knocked it out of the park, got yourself a team. Here you are, 3 years later. Tell me about where you are now from that beginning point.
Yeah. I have always been a person that doesn't stop working. So since coming in at nothing, I have gone through 2 years, 2.5 years of comedy sports. I've graduated Second City Conservatory. I've done the annoyance program. My brain is full of knowledge. And then just community wise, I'm like mad at this coronavirus because I felt like I was really starting to get close to people and have this big comedy family in Chicago. And now it's all spread out.
Yeah, everyone's all over the place now.
Yep. And so I feel like I have pockets of family, especially with the people that I work with regularly. So my rec league team at Comedy Sports, my conservatory team at Second City still meets regularly, even though we're done with that program. I have another show that I'm working on. And so I feel like I have pockets of community, but I can't wait until all of this is over so that I can feel like I have a home base again where I can go there and always feel like I'm going to see someone I know and get to be around my people.
Yeah, that feeling of like, oh, I have nothing to do tonight. I'll just go to blankety blank.
That honestly is one of my favorite things about the Chicago comedy community is you can if you're lonely, you can just go somewhere.
You can just go, and there will definitely be people there. Oh, definitely. I
Absolutely.
get that. My wife works nights, or she did, and so there were just certain nights of the week where I'm just like, oh, what time is it? 8:30? If I rush, I can still make so and so. Yeah, let's go. And it was great because you always felt like you had that home base. So I totally get that, and I think what a lot of us are feeling right now is that just kind of floating around feeling where I'm like, I'm still kind of talking to my people, but we haven't, and everyone's just kind of. It's very yeah. It's very. It wasn't until like the last couple of weeks where I actually felt like this is starting to actually like affect me. Um, okay, so you have your communities that you can totally rely on. How are you? You said your brain is full of knowledge, but how are you feeling like skill wise?
Yeah, skill-wise, I I will always feel like there's more skill to be gained. I have never been a person in any field that has been like, I've done it. I have all of the knowledge. Yep. I when I say my brain is full of knowledge, I'm like, it's full of way more knowledge than I had before, but there's still so much to gain. I feel like every time I have a meeting with someone at Comedy Sports where they're like, what do you want to do with the theater next? I'm like, well, Literally, I wanna do anything where I can keep having fun and keep learning, because that's what I'm here for, and I know I still have so much of that ahead of me that I just wanna keep pursuing that.
So, are you still in a place where you feel like you're still soaking in information, or have you kind of hit that place where you decide either like this is going to be like my fun side thing, or like let's do it whole hog comedian?
Oh, I have been whole hog since day one.
Great. So you're just
I came into town
you're in it
whole
to win
hog.
it. So,
Absolutely.
what are the relationships you're growing at Comedy Sports? Um, how would you say, if at all, they are differing from some of the other places that you have either performed at or taken classes at?
Yeah, it's I haven't really thought about this a whole lot before, but I guess it's definitely different where I feel like a lot of other places, it tends to be people that I work with that I'm also friends with, and comedy sports feels more like people that I'm friends with that I happen to also work with.
Okay, cool. And as you progress, and you literally just said like, I just want to keep doing the fun stuff, but do you have like do you have a set goal for whatever's next in your head? Like I'm assuming minor league.
Yeah, I would love to be on minor league, if Jason thinks that's where I'm gonna be learning the most and having the most fun. I would love to end up on ensemble eventually, uh, but I definitely want to make sure that I do that when it's my time to do that. I got to do an ensemble match, around Thanksgiving when we did, like, the family matches where they had one person from rec league, one person from minor league, and an ensemble member, and it was some of the most fun I have ever had doing improv,
What the
and
heck?
I love everyone on the ensemble, would love to perform with them, definitely a big dream of mine, but I definitely wanna make sure I go through the ranks first and enjoy my time on minor league first, and then I'll be able to enjoy ensemble even more.
Uh, from the time that you were on your college team and had to deal with your coach or team leader treating you the way they did on stage, do you see any more of that now, or are you feeling more supported in that sense? Do you feel like if you began to speak on uh, the the topic of being in the trans community on stage, like, do you feel like it would be received positively, or do you still feel like you might get that sort of attack from someone?
Absolutely. Are you, just to clarify the question, are you, talking about speaking in that, like, in front of an audience or to other members during a rehearsal?
I guess I mean more both. I guess I'm meaning more. Are you in a comfortable place where that's not something that you're like, oh, I don't talk about that on stage because of XYZ, or is it something that you're very proud of and are willing to, play those sort of characters on stage, essentially play yourself on stage, whether that might be an exaggerated version of you or whatever the scene might be calling for, but it's not something that you're fearful to put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely don't feel fearful to put that out there at all. In fact, in my sketch comedy work, I tend to gravitate towards it because I feel like it helps the audience understand me better. I have definitely tried little tricks here and there when I was more anxious about it to try to get the point across to the audience without actually saying anything. Like I would wear like a little like transgender flag pin or a pronouns button. Uh, but I felt way more connected to the audience when I was being my authentic self and not just trying to get the point across to them subtly. In terms of improv, it's definitely something that I'm still working on, not because I feel anxious about it, but I think part of it is that I've never seen someone play a trans person on stage. I think it's just a person, but I don't know what that would look like to try to tell a trans story on stage through improv.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, as you were saying, I was like, I guess I don't know what that would look like either. And I'm oh, wow, that it really just blew my mind with you just saying that. I'm like, yeah, I can't even imagine what that might actually look like. I like to think it's possible, but I guess, yeah. Oh, Clarke.
Yeah. And I guess now that I'm thinking more about it, there was one time, it was one of the first musical improv workshops that I did at Comedy Sports, where I started singing a song and it felt like it was going to be a mapped trans storyline where it was a vampire who wants to become a zombie.
Hmm. You there?
Am I back?
Okay, you're back. All right. So the last thing I heard was, um, it was a mapped scene from a vampire that was wanting to be a zombie.
Yes. And I found myself pulling back, and I ended up not telling that story, even though that was my impulse. Not because I didn't think it would be accepted, but I think I have a hard time making scenes about me. I want it to be about the group of people. And I feel like if I take an improv scene and I make it or map something onto a trans storyline, then it immediately becomes, well, I have to lead that scene. And everyone's going to look at me to take charge. And I want it to still be an ensemble activity.
Okay. And in that sense, then, and obviously, I feel like this might be a loaded question, but are are there ways that we could support in those moments to still continue to make it that ensemble piece without necessarily needing to throw the weight of it on you?
I think so. I think part of that might be me being in my head. I am sure I've had team members in the past who are incredibly skilled at improv, who would be able to do a lot more than just stare at me or ask me questions. I think you think of the people who are around trans people. You can keep playing the characters you were playing in that scene. That scene that I was in, it was two vampire parents. They could keep being vampire parents
Yeah.
in that scene and be supportive and love their zombie child. And it could be a great scene that I didn't have to fully control. I think I just felt like because it was a storyline that I'm so connected to that I was going to have to control it. So I think part of that is on me and needing to trust my teammates. And I think the thing that everyone can learn from this is that just because you don't fully understand a storyline, you don't have to put it all on the person who brought that up. You can keep doing your own thing and supporting that. Yes, and
Awesome. I love that. I love that. And actually, as I was asking you the question, it hit me where it was just, oh, yeah, there's obviously something we could do. We just need to talk about it. We just need to be able to sit down as a team and
yeah.
this is something we can do and let's support each other to do it. And then boom, problem solved. After I asked the question, I went, duh, come on, Luis. You're a director of diversity and inclusion. You should know. Uh, Clarke, this has been amazing. I am so happy that I finally got to sit and chat. I did not know any of this, and I'm ecstatic that I do. We're coming to the end of our time here, so um, the question that I have normally been asking people, you actually already answered before, which was, where do you see yourself going, and what can we do to help? But obviously, you said yourself, like, I'm still in a place where I still just want to continue growing, continue learning, feel supported, and eventually find my next step within the company. But uh, overall, I guess what are some final thoughts that maybe you want to share, or just any sort of advice that you might have for people?
My internet cut out for a second. Let me make sure that what I heard is what you said. You are asking if I have any advice that I can
Yeah.
give to people.
Let's start with advice. Do you have any sort of last sort of advice for anyone out there who is still young in their improv years, like yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important things that I have personally found and done are lead with love in everything you do. Whether that's how you perform a scene, how you treat your friends, but also follow the love. If you're getting a whole lot more love from one community than you are another, that community that clearly cares about you is worth more of your time than the one that doesn't seem to care about you but is offering you potentially big promises.
I think that is fantastic advice. Clarke, this was so fun. I'm so glad you had the time to come on. We will definitely bring you back on. I want to hear once how all your teams are going, and hopefully once we all get back on stage, I want to hear how that's going as well. We're gonna be cycling through these, so you will definitely be back, and we'll get an update. And we'll hear about everything that's going on. For everyone out there, thank you so much for being here. Please find us on Facebook. Please find us on Instagram. Please find us on Twitter. We also have a YouTube page, and we have our Twitch channel, CSZN Network. Please find us. Of course, please check out all the other DNI talks, which can also be found on our YouTube channel. And of course, we will see you at our next show, which is, of course, Fridays at 7 to 9:30, Saturdays at 7 to 9:30. Our Sunday team plays 7:30 on Sundays, and then of course our minor league 7:30 on Wednesdays. You can check that entire schedule out on our Twitch channel. Clarke, we will have you back. Thank you so much, everybody. See you next time.